Welcome to the Abstract Matrix. On this channel, I share true events and incidents from my life, which when taken as a whole, can be interpreted as evidence of the terrifying true nature of reality and of our mortifying and demeaning place in the cosmic pantheon. My entire life has been one long, continuously unfolding episode of profound, bizarre, high strangeness. I ask that you now listen as I recount the events and experiences of my life. I've always felt that these experiences contain critical messages about life, death, and the cosmos. Taken as a whole, they were all meant to be shared with the world, which is what I'm doing now. In Earth years, I am 72, though in truth I sense that I may be immensely older than that. To recount the lifelong strangeness, I must go back to my earliest memory, my earliest recollection of weirdness. I was 8 years old when the first incident occurred, and to this day the experience is as fresh and clear as if it happened only yesterday. At the time, I lived with my parents in a small but comfortable apartment in a community of projects in Brooklyn, New York. Though I was only 8, I had my own bedroom, which was right next to my parents' bedroom. I attended the local parochial school by day, and I did my daily homework at the kitchen table. Sometimes Mom would help me if the homework was too difficult. Then in the evening, I watched a little bit of TV, or I would play with my toys in my bedroom. Pop arrived home from work usually by 8 p.m., which is when Mom would put me to sleep. One night, I was awakened from a deep sleep by an odd, scary, creeping sound. I usually slept turned to my left side with my knees up, covered in my blanket. It sounded like someone had just walked into my bedroom. Mom always kept my bedroom door open. Sometimes she would come in at night to kiss me on the forehead. But this night, I knew that neither Mom nor Pop were in my bedroom. Whatever it was, slowly with light steps, crept over to the right side of my bed. I was immediately creeped out. Whoever or whatever it was just stood there in silence on the right side of my bed. I sensed it was leaning over slightly and just staring at me. I tried desperately to call out to Mom and Pop, but I found that my mouth and vocal cords were paralyzed, as was the rest of my body. I was unable to move or utter even the slightest sound. Then in my mind, I found that somehow an image of this entity had just materialized. Although I was turned and bunched up entirely to my left side under my blanket, it felt like this entity had somehow entered my brain and transmitted a picture of its appearance into my head. The entity was tall, thin, light complexion, pale, frightful eyes, with much of its form encased in a bright cloak. The image you see here reminds me a little bit of what the entity looked like in my head. What was this creature? Where did it come from? How could it just enter our apartment? How could it enter my brain? I knew that Mom and Pop always securely locked the front door of our apartment every night. For the longest time, the thing hovered over me, just staring. I remember feeling that something else was going on. It felt like a machine had been activated, and something was being done to me. Scared out of my wits, I continued to struggle with all my might to call Mom and Pop to come to my aid as I tried in vain to move even the slightest muscle. Finally, after some long minutes, the entity left. It just faded out. I finally regained my movement, ran to the bathroom to pee, then ran back to bed, hiding and trembling under the covers. I told Mom what had happened the next morning as she dressed me for school. Naturally, she said it was just a very bad dream. But was it? Was it? After that first incident, over the following months, that same entity materialized several more times in exactly the same fashion. During those visitations, I could hear the sounds of mechanical vibrations, of loud humming machinery. Something was going on. The entity was inside my head, telling me things that at the time I could not comprehend. But I sensed that someday, somehow I would come to understand. And frequently, it felt like this creature had temporarily transported me to a distant place before returning me home to my bed. Now, all this may sound like a typical case of UFO abduction or shadow people visitations, but I assure you, after you hear the whole story, all the facts, all the details, all the follow-ups, you will likely conclude, as I have, that the high strangeness in my life has in fact been the growing manifestation of the horrifying truth of our existence and of the abstract matrix. I wish this all had been as straightforward as a UFO abduction or shadow people. I wish that was the case. But the final truth is nothing like that. Nothing like anything you've ever imagined before. And I am not alone in experiencing this horrendous phenomena. Whether people are aware of it or not, this has been happening all over the world to millions or even billions of people for who knows how long, maybe even from the beginning of the human race. I will continue revealing more of these horrific incidents in the next video. I hope you join me.